Hi, Mary. So I will not keep you in suspense. I learned a lot in your class, so I'm just going to get right into the specifics of it. For varying learning needs, I thought I was a pro. I really did because I personally have like really bad dyslexia and I had it in school. So, of course, when I started working at after schools and stuff like that, I did a bit of research on things like ADHD, different SLDs, and ADD, and I thought I had a pretty good handle on that. But after your class, I kind of feel crazy for not taking it any further than those three topics. When I learned about EBDs and autism spectrum disorders, I it really kind of opened my eyes to different ways of teaching for different students than just the set that I had found originally or like studied originally. So right away, knowing that autism spectrum disorder students are visual learners, of course now I'm going to use that in the classroom courses in our classroom, but that they're visual learners, that's another little tidbit that would help me in the classroom that I never had even thought about looking up before. Even things that I did know, for instance, like having kids who did, and I didn't know what EBD meant, but having kids that did have behavior issues, giving them tasks and stuff like that, I would just do that, or doing a sensory corner or something like that. I just do those things because I've heard about them or like saw something somewhere. But knowing that in a classroom setting that you've given those as actual routes of mitigating issues or any outbursts from these kids is really helpful and a big tool for me just to know that it's an actual, proven concept that people use all the time. As far as culturally responsive teaching, I think you said this earlier in one of your slides, but you had talked about that you're not their savior, and that kind of hit with me a little bit just because I feel like I do, I guess, handhold kids a little bit too far if I think that they need it. And I feel like that might be an implicit bias of myself that like any minority child that I have needs that extra help or something like that. I feel like it's a little tiny thing that I do, but at least addressing it now, moving forward, is super helpful. So I also understand the importance of posing socially relevant questions to my kids and just making sure that I'm representing artists that are culturally diverse. I feel like if it wasn't for this class, I probably unfortunately would have stuck to like, the big hitters like Van Gogh, Picasso, and stuff like that, just because I guess I didn't even really think about that being part of my job too, to make sure that I'm representing not just, the people that I think are the big hitter artists, but to make sure that I'm representing even every student in my group. And then just back to with people with disabilities and stuff like that. We were talking about autism spectrum disorder artists, and I thought that was like the coolest thing because I've never even heard of that before. So that was really interesting to see too. Christopher Edmonds' book, or his little pitch for his book, I remember that was very interesting just because I liked the way he was talking about this like cultural divide between the student and the teacher. And of course, that's super important to at least address and know that it's there. As far as trauma informed practice goes, of course, I wrote my little paper on that. And at least what I found when I was writing my paper is that it could, in some cases, combat social inequalities felt by minorities. So that's really good. And I also learned about like more specifics on what you could implement in a classroom to have a trauma-informed classroom. And of course, you have things like safe spaces, even having a separate room if it was possible at a school. And that's something that, of course, I could bring up to a school that I was at to maybe implement a system like that. Even just being aware as a teacher of traumatization and kids in your class that might be traumatized, that is a huge help. And maybe just even understanding the student, at least like their needs. And as I found in my paper, that one article that showed the relationship between minorities, it can also maybe bring to light some implicit biases that you may have towards minorities. For differentiation, I found that I thought it was more of a kind of a mindset and not as much like this idea of like having to overplan for every single scenario that you have. And now, of course, it's important to listen to aides to find out, like, maybe what a student's needs are, or if they have, exceeding abilities in a certain area, that to find out what it is maybe from a teacher. But there's also just you actively looking out for that and seeing what adjustments you need to make for each individual student. So I originally had thought, oh, it's going to be this whole thing where I have to over plan for every little thing, but it's really, I find, more of a mindset. So for my something else, I had thought back to the beginning of the semester when you had talked about being an asset focused teacher. And I feel like that was something that was obviously reoccurring in the slides, but I feel like it was just a reoccurring little mantra that like started in my mind, even just being around kids and stuff like that. Just being aware and making sure that I'm being an asset focused, you know, whatever I'm doing. So I think that's something that I will absolutely at least keep in my mind. If anything from this class, I feel like the number one thing will be that I'll try to be an asset focused teacher. Okay, that's it.